Fellow citizens of the world, good afternoon, and welcome to My Voice, Your Voice. Today, our nation continues to celebrate the victory of our 44th president, Senator Barack Obama. I want to add my personal congratulations to the campaign for change and to say personally how gratified I am that our nation has shown a tremendous ability, as it has always done, to self-correct. Constantly, this country has shown that despite the time that may elapse, despite how long it may take, this country has constantly shown an ability to self-correct. And we did that on Tuesday. You know, some 40 years ago, a preacher from Atlanta, Georgia, some call him MLK, Dr. King, spoke of a dream that he had. And that dream was simply that his little kids would one day be judged not by the color of their skin, but more by the content of their character. Well, when Dr. King spoke of that dream, obviously he wasn't speaking just of his three little kids, but he spoke of all of us. Well, I'm sure Dr. King must be smiling today. I'm sure in his meeting today with the likes of Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, the legendary Bob Marley, Marcus Garvey, they must be talking about how this country has self-corrected after 40 years with the election of Barack Obama. But you know, there's a bigger message to the election of Barack Obama. There is a message that involves a challenge for change in all of us. And so I want to extend that challenge for change to people all around the world, citizens of the world. But I want to speak specifically to my fellow brothers and sisters in the island of Jamaica. You see, I recall not too long ago, Jamaica had an election. And I recall the promises of that election, the promises for change and a new driver. And you know, in a lot of sense, a lot of ways, I heard a lot of what I heard in that Jamaican electoral campaign, in the campaign here in the United States. In fact, so much of what was said by the current government in Jamaica during that campaign was also said here by the Democratic Party. Seem as if since those election events have overcome the government. First, they were faced with the rising cost of food right around the world, the constant crime problem that continues to plague the island and seem to have gotten worse over the months. But you know, the problems that Jamaica faces are not unique to Jamaica. In the United States alone, since this year, thousands of jobs have been lost. And you know, just last week, the mayor of one of the greatest cities, New York City, announced that every single person in the city must be prepared to sacrifice because the city is going through a financial crunch. And it made me ask myself the question, if great cities like New York, states like California and Georgia can be faced with severe financial hardship, what is it that exempts Jamaica from these financial difficulties? I think the part of it that upsets me the most is the hypocrisy that seems to exist among our politicians in Jamaica. Knowing that the crisis that our country faces, especially as it regards the economic conditions of a country, have a lot to do with the international crisis that most countries around the world are currently facing. But they would want to sell the Jamaican people a message that the crisis at home is a reflection on the management of the Jamaican economy 100%. You know, there may be some things that could have been done over the past couple of months to have prevented some of the hardship on the people. But you know what? There's a hell of a lot more that could have been done over the last decade to insulate Jamaica from the current problems. We could have invested more in agriculture and education. We could have invested more in our manufacturing sector. We could have insulated the Jamaican economy over the past decade. And you know, if it was difficult for some folks to have done it over 10, 15, 18 years, then it must certainly be difficult for this new government to have accomplished that in a few months. So, you know, let's be honest about it. Let's be honest about it. And let's use this opportunity presented to us by the election in the United States. Let's use this as an example. Let's use this as a starting point to where we go from here as a nation. And you know, Dr. King issued one challenge then. And his only challenge is that his people would one day be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. It seems as if the world has come around to that, and it seems as if now we're being judged by the content of our character. So let me challenge our people. Let me issue 4 challenges, and I do not presume to be the likes of Dr. King. I'm a simple citizen. But I want to challenge my fellow Jamaicans to 4 things: discipline, love, sharing, and caring. Let's talk about discipline. While I was in Jamaica a few months ago, I was somewhat disturbed by the level of indiscipline in our public transportation system. There still seems to be a high level of discipline in the way our kids basically conduct themselves in terms of their uniform, their attire. Yep, there is room for improvements, but you know, when you compare it to what goes on in the rest of the world, just the fact that they wear a uniform to school and they try to look their very best in those uniforms, it's still something that our country should be proud of. But public behavior, public display in our transportation system leaves a lot to be desired. And so I challenge all Jamaicans to look within themselves and let's raise our standard. Let's raise our standard. We can do better. Let's do better. Let's do better in public. Love. You know, when one of our sisters is raped, when you take the life of our mothers, when you take the life of our sisters, when you assault and abuse our women, when you completely act out of character, that is not love. Let's commit ourselves to love each other as we'd like to be loved, as Christ loved us. And let's not do to any man that which we would not like to be done to us. You know, as I think about sharing, I think about the scriptures. To whom much is given, much is required. If you can help your fellow man by the way, let's do that. You know, let's not pass anybody up that we can help. And let's not sit back and expect others to trickle down their wealth on us. Let's constantly devise in our own minds a way to improve our own standard of living. Caring. You know, the attitude of tearing each other down to advance our own self must stop. Our politicians must stop tearing each other down to advance their own career. And it is on that note that I call on the government to revisit a commitment it made during the election to have fixed election dates. You know, Jamaica just came through an election. The country just spent millions of dollars on an election. I say that after those elections are over, the government, the opposition, and everybody should come together to come up with a plan, a master plan, as to how we can improve our standard of living. And I tell you, Jamaica, there's going to be a need to do this. You know, let's not buy into the trickery of those who say that this government is not doing well, so we need to throw them out and elect a new government. Because then we're going to be faced with the same situation that we're faced with now. But when we hear the government or the opposition or anybody tearing each other down to advance their own self, let's stop them dead in their tracks and ask them to come together and